Rising Storm is a bit of a lull in the original arc. Well, the closest thing to a lull this arc has. But it is also in the running for one of the best books in the arc, for its spread of characters and the moments they share together. It's still a first arc book at heart, but there are some significant improvements. Rising Storm was released on January 6th of 2004, a little under 3 months after Forest of Secrets. Evidently, having Cherith come on as a second author allowed the turnaround time for book releases to speed up, though we'll have to see how long that lasts. Kate Carey is back as the author of this one, and considering this book is closer to Fire and Ice than Into the Wild in terms of plot advances, we could expect her to be in her element by now and write a lovely book. Before the story even begins, we can see some changes in the allegiances. Between Fireheart's promotion, Tigerclaw's exile, Willowpelt's move to the nursery, and Graystripe's clan switch, ThunderClan is back to having 8 warriors again. But they also now have 6 apprentices. Brackenfur was made a warrior, but we have newcomers Fernpaw and Ashpaw. There are now 5 queens instead of 4, with Willowpelt moving in, making the nursery tied with the Elder's Den for number of cats. Unfortunately, in this book, the top 10 characters have 86% of the lines. The percentage hasn't been this high since Into the Wild, and it's primarily because of Fireheart speaking more in this book than any other in the arc. Not even the other cats in the top 10 can come close to him. The characters that do get some focus around him are done very well, but Fireheart is very much the main star in this book. As far as the female percentage, it's roughly the same as the last book. Like Forest of Secrets, 38% of the characters are she-cats, but now they only have 33% of the lines, even less than before. This is mostly because of the side characters, along with Fireheart getting the lion's share of the speaking time. Of the characters with over 100 lines, and putting aside Fireheart, all of them are she-cats, Sandstorm, Bluestar, and Cinderpelt. But so many of the side characters and antagonists are male that it doesn't show much in the overall percentage. Additionally, and I didn't mention this in the Forest of Secrets video since there wasn't much change, but at this point the allegiances for Wind Clan, River Clan, and Shadow Clan are about even with each other in numbers of cats. All of them have at least 1 elder and queen, 4 warriors with some apprentices, and of course confirmed leaders, deputies, and medicine cats who all feature at least minorly in the story. And now it's time to see what this new cast can do in the space of this book. It's a pretty darn good one, so let's get into it. We open the book with what is technically the first medicine cat point of view of the series. See, you can't blame New Prophecy for it. Wait. Yeah, you can. We'll get to that eventually. For now, some mysterious medicine cat is mourning the slow loss of his leader's life by sickness while the clan bemoans their lack of fortune. Without learning which clan or even time period this is, we move back to Fireheart's perspective, where he's having great difficulties teaching Cloudpaw. Once he gives up on that problem, he tries to get used to the other difficult part of his life, being deputy. He struggles to get through patrols, helped by Sandstorm, a calm, insightful, and competent warrior, and Whitestorm, who shows far more wisdom and leadership qualities than Fireheart, and then gets to overhear elders gossip about his deputyship is doomed as he was named late. Fireheart is scared of Tigerclaw, a fear that comes out when he looks at Bramblekit, and Goldenflower confesses she knows the clan might not look favorably on her kits, and says she will protect them regardless. Whitestorm continues to be the backdoor deputy by learning and pointing out Ashkid and Fernkit's ages and recommending that they be made apprentices. Bluestar isn't doing great, so Fireheart has to choose the mentors, and he asks every cat in the clan before going to Cinderpelt, who guides him through the process of making a decision. He chooses Darkstripe and Dustpelt as the mentors. Spottedleaf visits him in his dreams, but this time just to walk away from him and leave him calling out for her desperately. What a great romance. For an impromptu, unspecified reason, Bluestar needs to go to the Moonstone and speak with StarClan, and she brings Fireheart along with her. In their absence, Whitestorm agrees to take over and immediately slips into the role with ease, unlike Fireheart. But the trip proves fruitless anyway, as Mudclaw and his patrol force Bluestar and Fireheart back, and they don't reach the Moonstone. After a gathering, Sandstorm and Fireheart find 2 ShadowClan warriors, Little Cloud and Whitethroat, sick on their territory, and Cinderpelt decides to treat them with or without Fireheart's eventual and reluctant permission, because she believes it to be the right thing to do. Cloudpaw is well fed, despite not bringing back much prey, and cats keep scenting him near the Two-Leg place, which culminates when Fireheart sees his apprentice getting food from Two-Legs. He feels guilty, and goes to both Princess and Sandstorm with his woes before he talks to Cloudpaw, who doesn't see what's wrong and inadvertently induces massive insecurity in Fireheart about his own kitty pet heritage. Soon enough, though, Cloudpaw is missing from camp, and Sandstorm and Fireheart learn he was taken by Two-Legs. Sandstorm tries to console him, and Fireheart lashes out at her and says she's abandoning Cloudpaw because she doesn't care about kitty pet-born cats, which she never suggested. Really not cool, dude, even if you're angry. The rest of the clan, though, seems content with letting Cloudpaw be gone. That night, Spotted Leaf comes again and tells him to beware a warrior who seems to sleep. And given that every warrior she's mentioned in these many prophecies had been Tigerclaw, you could guess where this is going. But even putting that aside, Fireheart and Bluestar have been on high alert for Tigerclaw through this whole book. Even if Fireheart interpreted it perfectly in an instant, which, surprise, surprise, he doesn't, he would do nothing differently. At all. Gosh, I hate these first arc mini-prophecies. Fireheart misinterprets the prophecy and drives out the 6 ShadowClan cats instead, following it up with a visit to Graystripe at the border to make sure they're gone and generally catch up on news. It's not all sunshine and rainbows though, because Mousefur, Thornpaw, and Runningwind were attacked by Tigerclaw and Runningwind is now dead. Shocker. Fireheart goes to confront him, and even then, he briefly believes Whitethroat, the sick and weak ShadowClan cat, killed Runningwind instead of Tigerclaw. Fireheart is kind of an idiot. Anyway, Whitethroat dies on the Thunderpath, and Tigerclaw's patrol fights Fireheart's and almost wins before Graystripe comes in with a patrol of his own. Bluestar is very shaken about Tigerclaw's threat as the clan mourns Runningwind. After a while of heightened patrols and sped-up training making everyone tired, Ravenpaw comes to visit with news of a fluffy white kitty pet with ThunderClan scent, Cloudpaw. Immediately, Fireheart decides to get his apprentice back, rescuing him from his terribly unhappy life with the 2 legs. Sandstorm, after failing to convince him not to go, decides to join him. They rescue Cloudpaw, and after a couple run-ins with some dogs and a WindClan patrol, arrive safely back with the apprentice in tow. The clan accepts him after his story of being stolen, and Fireheart agrees to keep the truth secret as long as Cloudpaw proves he has learned his lesson. The clan can't catch a break, though, as that night there is a forest fire. ThunderClan escapes to RiverClan, Fireheart saves Bramblekid, and tries to save Patchpelt, but the Elder dies. Soon after, he is able to make his way back to ThunderClan's camp, and he finds Halftail dead, and Yellowfang, who was supposed to help him out, dying. A heart-wrenching death scene occurs, and ThunderClan returns to their camp. Fireheart discovers Bluestar is not well enough to attend the gathering, and leads the clan to Fortrees in her place. After some sharing of news, the leaders gather, learn that Nightstar is dead, and then that Tigerstar is the new leader of ShadowClan. Tigerstar being leader at the end of this book marks the end of the time where either Bluestar or Fireheart should have thought to tell the other clans about him, but for some reason they choose not to do that, leading to plenty of pain for ShadowClan, RiverClan, and themselves. Perhaps Bluestar wasn't thinking clearly enough to make that call, but Fireheart has never shied away from sharing crucial information across borders before, especially in such a dire situation. There really shouldn't have even been any backlash based on what we've seen already. When ShadowClan announced one of their cats had turned traitor and was now wandering as a rogue, no one took issue with it, even though Broken Star, a cat no one really trusted, was given the news. Why would it be any different for the trustworthy Fireheart announcing Tigerclaw's departure? There is another issue, one that isn't quite as pressing, but that has been growing through this arc. The clans aren't really that different from each other. Now that we've seen sympathetic and unsympathetic sides of every clan and bits of each of their cultures, it's easier to see that the differences we were presented with at first aren't present. The clans live in different places and prefer some types of prey, but they're all, first and foremost, clan cats, willing to work together and adapt to new situations if need be. Even Graystripe managed to get used to swimming and eating fish in less than a moon, according to Leopard Fur, who certainly wouldn't hesitate to critique him if she found anything wrong. Other than those little hiccups, though, the plot is a fairly solid one, at least by warrior standards. Tigerclaw is minimally used until the end, more as a theoretical force in the background than an agent in the plot. So let's get into the other characters, the meat of this book. First, and for the future, it's worth noting that One Whisker and Fireheart don't have a perfect friendship even here. Fireheart gets angry at him for WindClan's behavior towards ThunderClan in this book, and One Whisker can't properly explain himself. Still, they quickly brush it off and converse more freely. Runningwind is still taking over as a mentor for every cat under the sun, squashing his only line of previous characterization into dust just as he dies. Poor guy never got to be anything concrete in this series, but I'm sure that's not a situation that will ever come up again. Brightpaw, once again, has very little to say here, but she's often used as a foil for Cloudpaw, the perfect apprentice, being obedient, dutiful, compassionate, and patient. Also, for the future, I'll just say that one of the only things she does say is that it would be nice to have Cloudpaw back. And later, they greet each other with a friendly nuzzle. Also, Dustpelt and Fernpaw are getting along really well. This isn't presented as terribly weird in the moment, but looking back on this almost brand new apprentice flirting with this fairly experienced warrior is a bit uncomfortable. When they're both adults, they make a really nice pair, but it's important to remember that their cuteness later on can't and shouldn't erase where their relationship started. We can praise them for what they did right while still acknowledging that the relationship was founded on a serious flaw. Graystripe only visits Fireheart briefly, and he seems to be getting along in RiverClan rather well. He still cares for and helps Fireheart, of course, but he really seems to love his kids, and after all the fish he's been eating, he doesn't even mind swimming in the river. This book does a lot to make you believe he could really be a RiverClan cat now and forevermore. He does show flits of disloyalty when the fire destroys his old territory, but considering all of RiverClan was giving ThunderClan sympathy and shelter, and how close he was to those woods and the cats there, it's understandable for now. I like this Graystripe. He's on his best behavior. For most of the book, Blue Star is distant, but occasionally she shows her affection for and trust in Fireheart. She shows pride in the numerous times he's helped or saved the clan, and treats him as the only worthwhile cat in ThunderClan, something Fireheart finds uncomfortable. She's definitely still in control of her mind, but there are growing unfounded suspicions that anyone who's read the series before will immediately see as warning signs for her future. In fact, after the fire, she seems to fully crack before our eyes, condemning StarClan for telling them fire would save her clan, refusing to go to the gathering, and seeing traitors around every corner. But I do really like her reaction to hearing about Ravenpaw's part in getting Cloudpaw back. She remembers that he tried to warn the clan about Tigerclaw and wishes she had listened. She asks without a second thought if he should be invited back into the clan. But we know from Ravenpaw's speech earlier that he wouldn't want to come back. He has a happy life with Barley. But it's good to know he's welcomed in ThunderClan. Like a den maid, in fact. He doesn't receive Blue Star's ire, even in her more crazed moments. Whitestorm is an amazing deputy. He isn't deputy, but he's clearly working as the greatest power behind the throne for this whole book, helping Fireheart and keeping a quiet watch over everything happening all over the clan. He is the most obviously qualified cat around to be deputy. I've always loved the relationship between Yellowfang and Cinderheart, and seeing it here at its peak before Yellowfang's death was great. We saw them understanding each other, taking on some of each other's mannerisms, respecting each other, and even quarreling with each other when it came to their beliefs. They have a really beautiful friendship. Cinderpelt herself is having significant insecurities about her place as a medicine cat, but through helping Whitethroat and Little Cloud and learning to make her own decisions, asserting herself over the sometimes equally insecure Fireheart, she comes into her own. It's really inspiring, and nice to see that she keeps growing even past her injury plotline. Being a medicine cat has made her a more compassionate, open, assertive, and talented cat. Please stay a good character, Cinderpelt. As for cats that are not as inspiring, Cloudpaw is a brat, made all the worse by the fact that he is usually a capable cat, outdoing his den mates when he bothers to try. His biggest problem through the book is that he's talented enough that he doesn't have to try, and doesn't want to. He usually gets the job done, but he's sloppy and doesn't hold much respect or care for StarClan, Fireheart, or anyone else for that matter. Hopefully he will internalize his lesson from his run-in with the two legs and improve moving forward. On a brighter note, for the first time, Sandstorm talks a substantial amount, more than anyone but Fireheart, in fact. Apparently losing Graystripe was exactly what she needed to do anything. This book, Sandstorm, is the best she ever gets to be in the series. I really think she could have been a more effective character if they let her speak more before now. Enemies to lovers really only works if you show off the enemy part. Also, it's made clear in every book that Sandstorm is more intelligent, experienced, and generally competent than Fireheart, but she's also continuously put on a lower level than him by the surrounding characters and the narrative. Sandstorm is suggested first as one of the new mentors, but Darkstripe is chosen over her since it would be unwise to make two inexperienced warriors mentors together. Which would be a great excuse if Fireheart and Graystripe, two completely fresh warriors who had barely gone on a patrol, were both given apprentices together, and if this sort of thing didn't happen many times later in the series, even under Firestar's leadership. She expresses in this book that she's never had an apprentice, while Fireheart has had two, and strongly implies multiple times that she wants one. Even Ravenpaw notices. We'll see what Fireheart does with that information later, but at this point she's mostly here to be an unnoticed love interest, since Fireheart is too wrapped up in his own problems and his ghost love interest to notice the cat who's really just trying to be even his friend. And Sandstorm deserves better than that. She stands up for him against other warriors who want to put him down for his talents as a deputy or a mentor, and even supports him in subtler ways like Whitestorm does when it comes to patrols. Even when he directly blows up at her for something she never said, she forgives him almost immediately, with only one sharp phrase to tell him what he did was wrong. Even with every time she reaches out to him, and every time he uses her as an emotional crutch, Fireheart doesn't recognize Sandstorm as trying to get close to him until Cinderpelt tells him directly, where he's suddenly implied to start feeling love. from which we would conclude that he didn't even think about loving her until he knew she loved him. Poor Sandstorm. Our main character isn't exactly perfect. Even putting aside his romantic issues, Fireheart is not a good leader. He needs to learn to be one by the end of the series, but he has a lot of areas to grow in, and he won't succeed in all of them. To be a good leader, you need 3 things: skill with large-scale organizing, the ability to manage personal relations, and a proper balance of firmness and compassion when dealing with those you lead. He has none of these. He shows continuously that he has great difficulty with large-scale organizing and decision-making whenever he is asked to pick patrols or mentors for apprentices, something Whitestorm and even Cinderpelt easily slip into. In this particular matter, he gets better over time, even in this book. But that isn't enough. He doesn't reach out to many of his clanmates, even Sandstorm, who would like him unless he continuously screwed her over, which he does. And with Cloudpaw, and moving backwards and forwards, even Cinderpaw and Bramblepaw, he shows that he is unable to teach cats to do anything they wouldn't do otherwise. All 3 of his apprentices follow their own nature in the end, and lead to their own fates. And here we see that when Cloudpaw is disobedient, Fireheart's only strategy is yelling at and punishing him over and over, sometimes even ignoring him, in the hopes that he'll learn eventually. Very few of the things I've talked about are necessarily flaws with the book, but they do make maddening characters that are easy to condense into their simple, nice hero guy, angry girl, depressed leader, etc. stereotypes if it's been a while since you read the books. There are a few parts, continuing over this whole arc, that are major issues, which I will likely cover in a Sunny Spiels another time. But for the most part, this was a good character study book with a big cast of reasonably flawed characters, and growth towards what I'm sure will be a great ending to the first full Warriors series. But just how good the penultimate book turns out to be is something I'll have to cover next time, in our trip through time.